that is within an easement. So there was two waivers that the Traeger family was asking for. One of them was not having the right-of-way access as required by the ordinance, which is allowed to be waived by Planning Commission and Council, as well as reduction to the frontage since they don't have that frontage requirement. So because of that, this proposal does utilize that existing access easement, as was talked about at the discussion, the conceptual discussion. And at that time, the Planning Commission was receptive to it, so they went forward with this proposal today. So this would be for a recommendation of approval to council for the land use amendment and approval of the certified survey map.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Several people share that road now. It's well maintained by the neighbors, so it's not an issue. I don't think it's an issue.
One thing I think it's important to note too, and this is more for the record, is the idea that I had one person call at one point with the question of how this was different than some other scenarios. And I think the biggest thing here is if someone were to do a land split today and want to install a new easement to a new property, which the code would not recommend, I would assume that would be treated very differently. I think the difference here is because this lot is within kind of a group of existing lots and the easement's already there. They're kind of keeping the status quo. And I just want to think that's important to note that that's what makes this pretty much different than a lot of the other ones we've seen.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to resolution PC 065-2020, recommendation to the Common Council to amend sections 392-22, 392-23, and 392-24, and 400-31 of the municipal code.
Move to approve.
Second.
Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. This item was also in front of the the Common Council recently for a public hearing, which was held on October 27th. This tonight would be a recommendation to the Common Council, and it's for really two kind of different code changes. One code change is the section 392 of the land division ordinance, which is really just updating the datum, which is really a surveying mechanism of how they do some horizontal measurements. So it's recommending changing the datum to be in line with what other Waukesha County communities are using, as well as some cleanup about instead of taking like 3.5-inch diskette, taking a flash drive or DVD or something. So a little bit of cleanup there. And this was requested by our GIS and IT department. And the second code, which is in chapter 4 or section 400, what it does is the city has a groundwater separation requirement for lowest floor of the home. And the way the code is currently written, it talks about any variances being made by the Public Works and Safety Committee. Per some talks with our attorney, the suggestion was to change it so that any variances would still be reviewed by Public Works and Safety, with a recommendation being made to the Common Council for final confirmation and approval. So just confirming the Common Council has that final call on these types of requests.
Questions or comments? It's really just a housekeeping update. All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously as well. Resolution PC 069-2020, approval of a 4-lot certified survey map for Byron, Hirin, located on Parker Drive, tax key 2020-80.999.014. Yep. I skipped one. I apologize. Yeah, I checked off a box too soon. I withdraw that one. So we're in resolution PC 067-2020, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for S.J. Lewis located on the corner of College and Racine Avenues, tax key number 2177.66, I'm sorry, 0.996.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. This use is a use that we received. It's something kind of unique. It's a temporary use that's being requested. As many of you are probably aware, City of Waukesha, as part of the Great Water Alliance, is taking on the big project of providing water to its residents. As part of that water coming into Waukesha, which is not through Muskego, that water has to be returned to that water basin, and as such, there is a water return line that is being planned through Muskego. So the part of the project that will be near us will be in New Berlin, Muskego, and Franklin. And as part of this request, S.J. Lewis is a company that's going to be doing that part of the project, and they're looking for a site that they can kind of temporarily use. Now, they say temporarily, it's for about 2 years, that they're going to be coming in, putting down some gravel, and storing either products, materials, equipment, trucks. So pretty passive, they're not doing late night work and that kind of stuff. But definitely something that the Planning Commission should definitely still review and have some oversight on if they had any special, conditions or concerns. This is kind of a use that's kind of a gray area in the code, but the code talks about any kind of unclassified uses being subject to Planning Commission determination. So that's why we're here tonight. One of the things, like I just mentioned, that we as staff are recommending, just so we don't end up with a big rutted up, muddy mess, we are recommending that any area that they want to store anything on or park anything on should be made gravel. They do, in their narrative, talk about providing gravel in certain areas, and we think that's probably the safe bet, is to make sure any area that's going to have disruption of soil, so we don't have erosion issues, have gravel within it. They are also talking about having proper soil erosion devices in place and such. They are working with the county to make sure the county is okay with access to Racine Avenue. They're looking at utilizing the existing driveway that's already there right across from the sand and gravel pit across the road. Staff doesn't really see any issues. There are some apartments to the east, but given this use being predominantly daytime, we don't expect it to be any major issues. There is a tree line that's existing there and on the north and on the south for that matter. So staff's recommending approval subject to the conditions in the resolution.
Questions? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. Just as a side note on that, is going to be disruptive to our city from one corner to the opposite, starting next year. So just kind of give everyone a heads up. They're going to try keeping all the roads open as much as possible, but I think it's inevitable when you're bearing a size pipe they're looking at that some roads are going to have at least delays. So we'll keep everyone informed as we get more information going forward. Now we're moving on to resolution PC 069-2020. Approval of a 4-lot certified survey map for Byron Huron located on Parker Drive, tax key number 2020-80.999.014.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item, along with the next two, 70 and 71, kind of all piggyback upon each other, so there's probably no need to talk about them 3 times, so I'll kind of just cover it all now. So as was mentioned, the applicant is looking to separate a handful of additional lots via certified survey map. It will be a total of 8 separate lots, in addition to what's already there today, when the land division's already all done. Via CSM, you're only allowed to have 4 lots or outlots on each document, so that's why there are 3 consecutive certified survey maps, each one dividing something from the previous. The applicant did divide 4 lots off of this property numerous years back, and at that time they dedicated the roadway, a future roadway for Madison Court, which is shown on the CSM. Madison Court was approved when at the time our rules allowed like a private driveway if 4 homes or less used one of these roadways. That code has long since been removed. And there was also a condition of that original approval that any further splits on Madison Court would require full public road. So as part of this proposal, Madison Court would be built out to a full city street with a ditch section. There is an existing cul-de-sac bulb that does kind of teardrop into lot 4 of the previous CSM. As part of this, there would have to be a separate right-of-way vacation that would happen to that, and they're looking at dedicating a new bulb into the new area they're looking to split off their additional lots. As part of this, they will have to account for stormwater management. You'll see on the 3rd CSM out of these 3 is when the stormwater management lot or outlot gets to be shown, which would be located in the southeast corner of this property. All of the lots, at least at a conceptual review so far, we're waiting on the technical comments, do appear to meet the general land division requirements. There's obviously some little technical things we'll work out. One of the questions that is something that we have noted kind of in the supplement resolution is the idea of the outbuildings on the property. So with the first CSM, the amount of outbuildings, because there's a limit of outbuilding square footage related to your lot size. So as the lots get smaller, that's in theory less outbuilding area you're allowed. On the first CSM, the outbuildings are fine, but as you start to do the second and then eventually the third, that lot becomes too small to support all the outbuildings that are on there. So as such, the applicant will have the ability to either remove some buildings or apply for rustic structure designation, which our code allows as a possibility through Park and Conservation Commission and then eventually Plan Commission approval under a conditional use grant. So that's another option. So the owner's aware of this. This is something we've talked about, and we'll further refine the numbers as we do our further review to know exactly at what point this has to happen. Some of the lots will be accessing that new Madison Court right-of-way, as we talked about, and some of the lots, I think 2 of them specifically will be accessing, or 3 of them, will be accessing on the north on Kelsey, right, Kelsey? Parker. As far as zonings go, on the first CSM, the lots that front Madison Court all have the proper zoning, and they were rezoned previously, but not all of the bulk acreage meets that rezoning. It does not appear that other further rezonings will be needed, but as we do the full technical review on this, if anything like that would come up, we'll make sure to bring that up at that time. Like I said, otherwise, the land divisions are the resolution number 69 is for 4 lots. Resolution number 70 is for 4 lots, and resolution 71 is for 2 lots. And if we want to make motions separately, obviously, but unless there's specific questions, we can talk about them all at once.
Yeah.
Easier.
So the frontages that come off the bulb off of Madison Court are meet code lots?
Yes, the ordinance says when you have frontage on a cul-de-sac bulb, you need 45 feet of frontage.
Okay.
And then at the setback line, which I think for these zoning, for the zoning here, most of these are 40 to 50 feet, then it has to be a width of 80 feet in width. And then it should stay that width going back. So yeah, because the idea of cul-de-sac lots inherently have to be a pie shape of some sort, that's why they're allowed to reduce frontage. If they weren't on the cul-de-sac, it's 80 feet of frontage.
Okay. And then the remaining lot in the southeast corner is just going to be a wetland area. That's going to be where all the surface water is going to go?
Yeah, when you look at the drawing that's tied to map resolution 71 is the final CSM, and what that does is it takes that wetland area as well as some land to the west and north of it, and it calls it a lot right now, which we're required to be called an outlot, and we'll have intentions on there making it very clear for stormwater. Their engineer has prepared construction plans, and I think they're working with their engineering team concurrently to kind of get those looked at. They have already planned, it hasn't been fully reviewed yet, but planned stormwater in that southeast part of the site. We know there are some existing stormwater issues in that general region, and this site will do everything that it legally is required to do to help mitigate that.
And that'll be identified as a non-buildable lot?
Yes, because it doesn't have lot access and because it doesn't meet the minimum lot size. So that's why we'll call it an outlot, and we'll have use restrictions put on it, making clear that's for stormwater purposes and wetland protection also.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. I'll be looking for a motion since we answered all questions, unless we have some specific questions about 070 and 071. If you want to make a motion to approve both those at the same time, that would be ideal.
So moved.
Second?
And just for the record, this is for resolutions PC 070-2020 and PC 071-2020, both for land divisions of the same petitioner. Were there any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Those two pass unanimously. Moving on to resolution PC 072-2020, approval of a building site and operation amendment for Milk Can Hamburgers and Custard located on Janesville Road, tax key number 2198.984.006.
Move to approve.
Second?
Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. So many of you may have heard about this already out in local media, and I think the city was really excited to hear about this, that the Arby's, which kind of closed abruptly and to a lot of people's surprise, has a new tenant that has a is looking to make their new home there. Milk Can Hamburgers, which a lot of people know from their food truck, which has been seen a lot throughout the community over the last year or so. Very well received. If any of you have had it, you'll know you'll always wait a little bit, which is a good thing because there's such high demand. So really well received in the community, and they are looking at making this, like I said, their permanent home. So as part of this request, the reason they're in front of the Plan Commission is really for some changes to the building. The first thing to note is they kind of show phase 1 and phase 2 plans in their plan set. Phase 1 is strictly some painting, which they've already started to do. They did talk with staff, so it wasn't something they did without us knowing. And we kind of advised them at their own risk, they could start some painting because they were looking at some very traditional colors that we didn't think would be of a big concern obtrusion, but they didn't know that if there were any questions here tonight that those may have to be amended. The bulk of their approval, though, is what they would call phase 2, and phase 2 is really a little bit more of an overhaul of the whole building. You know, they don't want it to look like an Arby's anymore. They clearly want it to look like what they're looking for as far as their branding with Milk Can hamburgers and custard. So as part of this request, they are looking to have an outdoor seating area facing Janesville Road. There's kind of a grass area and some landscape areas. So they are looking at adding an outdoor patio feature there with some doors that go out to that feature. They are asking for a spot kind of just off the northeast corner of the building where on busy summer nights or any time for that matter, they would be allowed to park a trailer that they had that would serve custard. So if, you know, it would kind of help take some of that custard burden out of the restaurant during those nicer summer months. That trailer would not necessarily be kept or stored on site. It would be, though, in that designated parking area for serving of its customers during certain times. As of now, they're stating that the hours of business would be approximately 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. But as the business gets going, they may look to open as early as 7 to possibly be allowing breakfast. They are going to keep the drive-thru open. As far as architecture, this area is governed by our general design guide and the downtown design guide. They are looking to do some changes to the facade. All 4 sides of the building are being painted a mixture of gray, red, and bronze to begin. As far as the second phase stuff goes, they are looking to cover the existing masonry in the front with distressed wood wrap and galvanized canopies as a rustic tribute to the classic Wisconsin hamburger stand. The one thing that kind of was a byproduct of this is normally the design guides call for 50% masonry, and by taking the existing masonry and cladding it in, you know, I think what we'll all say is kind of a current trend with the wood slatting and, you know, kind of the rustic look, they are looking to cover that masonry, which would drop the masonry down to 0%, at least on that Janesville Road facing side. So that might be one item the Plan Commission may want to talk about just to make sure they're comfortable with or not. But they are also doing some cladding near the drive-through area with the distressed wood and columns on the corners of the building. As far as access goes, the site, other than the additional outdoor seating, will remain very much the same. They are looking at widening a little bit of the kind of parking area in the front of the site, which is strictly kind of a little waiting zone. So we do have some notes in the resolution and the supplement that talk about that the driveway must be at least 12 feet wide, separate from the parking or waiting stalls, as well as there must be a 3-foot separation from the lot line. They don't have a survey yet, but their estimated numbers appear to think that will be met, and a survey would be required before they can do any of that site work to make sure those numbers are being met and verified. There is an existing dumpster enclosure on the back part of the site that would remain. We are recommending in the resolution that they paint that, though, to match the building color if it is not going to be the same color as the building already. As far as landscaping goes, they are putting some landscape. They're kind of redoing some of the landscape beds on the property, or the planters, I should say, and some landscaping along the front of the site. When Arby's owned the site, there were some street trees they had that somehow got cut down by previous tenants or someone. We are asking that those get replaced as our codes encourage, and we're asking that those be moved in front of the building, not off to the side as street trees like that typically are. They have been working with staff on some conceptual signage ideas. They seem to be heading in the right direction. There's some talk of either refacing the monument sign or completely redoing it, as well as some signage in the building. There doesn't seem to be any major questions on the signage, and they'll work with staff to get the final permits and size. As far as lighting goes, one thing that we have in the resolution is that they're doing a nice and decorative kind of feature. Some of the lighting is covered by some galvanized shrouding, which we don't think will be a concern at all. But they do note that some lights won't be concealed. They'll actually have an exposed bulb, which the way the ordinance reads, your light source should usually be like concealed or in a way that you're not seeing the direct light source. So usually it's full cutoff, meaning you don't see the light bulb source, as well as 0 degree tilt, meaning perfectly horizontal to the ground. So what we have allowed on one other site the Plan Commission approved was if they wanted to keep a similar light fixture style, they could have the option to like frost or etch the glass enough where you're still going to have light emanate from it, but you're not going to see that light bulb source, which is usually the concern with glare and things like that. So we do have the resolution written that they would be allowed to keep the same fixtures if they want and do the etching of the glass, or they could choose a different fixture that staff could approve that meets the ordinance requirements. Otherwise, just some minor notes and stuff in the resolution. We do note that if there's any new or replaced rooftop or ground mechanicals, they will have to properly screen them. We're not going to obviously make them do anything to something that's existing, as that's kind of something they inherited, but if they have to do any newer replacements, that would have to be screened with staff review. Otherwise, staff is recommending approval and thinks this will be a nice addition to that site.
Questions, comments?
That's great.
Is there
How
a
much-
shared egress to the building on the southwest?
Yeah, the building could be, actually, I think it's southwest, so I'm sorry, east.
Southeast.
So Janesville Road kind of runs northeast and
Right.
southwest. So Pizza Hut is the business that shares an access with them, and I believe there is cross access. There's actually even technically a site behind this that you don't really see on their site plan that also has an access easement that goes straight through the site. So yeah, there's like technically 2 existing sites and a third potential that all share that egress. Because it's a county highway, the county restricts access to that one shared point. And that would all remain, not be affected.
Thank you.
Are the existing columns brick?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pull up the drawing here. I think the full building right now is masonry, with the exception of any areas that are glass. So yeah, right now the kind of the column features which are found on the corners of the building and kind of parading down the side of the building, they are currently brick.
Okay.
But they'll be covering them.
Will those be covered as well, or just painted?
Let me go to the plan here.
Is this paint walls at drive-through, paint columns? Paint walls rave red? Ooh. Because it looks like only the front area is going to be clad with,
Yeah, so there are, yeah, and I'm looking at this one elevation here, yeah,
What are you
some of
talking
the
about,
corners,
sides here?
yeah.
Okay.
yeah, some of the corners are, you know what, yeah, you know, there is one more drawing I can go grab, you know, I noticed we don't have the side drawing in here.
Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
perfect, thank you. So yeah, I can pass this down too. So, yeah, the corners look like they are, the corners themselves are clad in wood, wrapped with wood.
Maybe he just wants to answer the question?
Yeah.
There we go.
Go right to the stars.
Let me just get the, let me get it from the horse's mouth.
All right.
Yeah, so the intent would be. Could you stand up on the microphone
The
now?
microphone, please.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so the intent would be that as a part of phase 2, all of the brick column features around the building are being wrapped in a distressed wood.
Oops.
The
Upon
plan would be
further
for the
review.
4 columns on the corners of the building to be wrapped in wood, as well as the 2 bordering the door in front. The 3 columns in the center of the building would remain brick and be repainted in a lighter shade of gray. You should be able to see that on the phase 2 renderings.
Here.
Okay. And the areas between the columns, what is the composition of that material?
That is brick,
That's all brick too?
The red area?
correct?
So there'll be a significant amount of brick remaining on the building that's not.
Yeah, we're not at all concerned on the sides, and not that it's a concern, it was just something we wanted to bring up as it's in the design guides. The only facade side that might bring the question is the Janesville Road facing side.
Okay.
But, you know, it's, when you look at the elevations, it still looks like a very nice, complete
And I like the
proposal.
accents. I think it's a real nice rustic touch to the building itself.
Well, I think it's a good example of us being, you know, their guidelines are not
Yeah.
requirements.
Absolutely.
And, you know, as times change and styles change with this, I think
Right.
it's a good addition.
Yeah, we always like to stress the idea of the architecture presence is more important than a strict masonry number. And I think this is a good example of it here.
And I think it's a welcome addition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. They made me wait 3 weeks before I could announce anything, but Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Look forward to your opening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Resolution PC 073-2020, approval of a three-lot certified survey map for the Dave Weiss property located on Northview Drive, tax key number 2020-10.999.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. So this proposal was another item that was in front of us for conceptual review earlier this year. This is our conceptual review follow-up night, it looks like here, for Mr. Weiss, who's looking to split his current lot. The original thought at concept was kind of splitting it in two parts. West half would be for himself, and the east half would be for one of his children to be able to build on. In wrapping up kind of the actual final CSM, Mr. Weiss found out that his child that wants to build in a certain area of the lot, which kind of put that lot that he wants to sever off in would be like the northeast corner of his property. So that kind of then led to the question of this ultimately becomes a three-lot certified survey map because of the access needed to get to that back northeast corner lot. Severs off a southeast lot, so it ultimately is a three-lot certified survey map following the RC2 zoning. When this came for conceptual review, a couple of the items that were up for discussion, which are obviously still up for formal discussion tonight and formal council discussion tomorrow, will be relating to a few things. So right now, currently Mr. Weiss is proposing to dedicate the proper cul-de-sac bulb into his property. Right now, there isn't a formal, the cul-de-sac bulb that exists is substandard and is further south down the road. And what they're looking at doing is leaving that as is per the conceptual discussion the Plan Commission had. At that time, they were receptive to the idea of, since it is only for one lot at that time, now it's potentially two more lots by byproduct, that right away would not have to be improved. Now, since the original discussion only thought it was going to be two lots, one additional home, because there's a second additional lot now, I don't know if that changes the Plan Commission's mindset that if that third lot ever gets developed, would that road have to maybe be improved to the proper cul-de-sac bulb area at that point? It's going to be dedicated now. It's just not improved now. So no, that's one thing that was talked about. I listened to the audio again this afternoon, and it always sounded like if anything more than one additional lot was built or divided, at that time of building, the road would have to be extended properly. So that's one item we may want to talk about, is having that extension occur if lot 3 ever gets built on or any subsequent lots. And another point of discussion is the idea of connecting any kind of right-of-way or easement or anything to land to the east of this. One of the things we talked about that conceptual discussion was the school district owns land immediately east of this lot. And it's kind of leftover land that they didn't use for the middle school. The district does not know their exact purposes with this. The mayor and I talked with them previously, and they don't know what's going to happen there. Who knows? Future, you can't predict the future. But the school district, made it clear that they don't know, and that could be one of the many things, including one of them maybe selling it to someone who might want to develop it for home sites or something. So one of the questions too that the Plan Commission should discuss again tonight and will ultimately discuss by council tomorrow is the idea of the ordinance does talk about requiring connections to the furthest extent of development, meaning if a lot adjacent to it has division potential, it should potentially have a stub provided to it. Doesn't mean a paved road, it means some kind of usually dedication or something. And the city has required many land dividers to do this in the past. The question is, do we want to do it here or do we not? There was a lot of discussion about this at the conceptual point, and at that time the consensus was probably not make him do something, but being that there's that third lot there, it's something we should really talk about. Other than that, it appears that the bulk of the division meets the land division requirements. It is going through technical review at this time, and as soon as we have those technical comments, which this approval is subject to, those will be passed on to the applicant.
Is there access to the school-owned property from Highview as well?
Yes,
Okay, there is.
technically there could be. I mean, right now there isn't, it goes to the school, but the whole parcel is owned by the school district. They have that Highview access, but
That goes to the school now.
goes to the school as an
Yeah.
emergency entrance exit. While there's enough land there for a road, right now the road they have in there is not built to city specs by any means, but there is room for that.
So Northview going up to the lot is a fully improved city street.
For the most part, yeah. Like I said, at some point, there's kind of a smaller flared out area, but yes, for all intents and purposes, it is. Up, not into his lot, but just before it.
Okay, but
And he'd be dedicating the bulb that he needs in his lot to have the frontage that's required to do the land split.
the bulb would not be city standard.
Yeah, those are pretty clear consensus at the last conceptual discussion, so we have it written in a way to mirror that. When it comes to road extensions, usually the final decision lies in the hands of Public Works and Safety Committee. So we do have listed in the supplement resolution that I think it should go to them for that final call, but usually they're pretty good on Plan Commission's recommendations. I don't think that's really a big question personally.
Mr. Weiss, did you have something to say?
Yeah, the school does already have its accesses to that land, and it is zoned for a school, right? It's not zoned for anything else. So it does have two access points, which they currently use every day, both of them. So they use that road that's supposedly exit only. They use it every day, every morning and every afternoon for kid pickup and everything like that. So they do have their own access to their property. So I'm kind of confused as to why I have to give them access, because my land was developable before, and they never had to deed any access to me through their land.
The difference is a land division. They did not do a division. If they would have done a division, this question could be in play. They didn't. As part of their they purchased a full lot and they built on the full lot.
They did have to divide this land from Mr. Charlie Schweitzer. So when they did do that land division, it should have been brought up at that point in time.
I don't think that was a code back then, because they owned that land for a long time.
Land was divided before the school district bought it. Because his sister lives on one part of it, Charlie lives over here, and they did divide out that before the school district purchased it. From my recollection, at least, it was that way.
The code, and just again, this isn't unique to this division, this is unique to any division. The way the code is written that way is it wants to promote interconnectivity. We don't want to have a lot of long, endless cul-de-sacs. That doesn't mean we don't have any, that's why each one's reviewed on its own merits. But that's why the ordinance is set up how it is to have connectivity wherever possible, wherever is reasonably possible.
I mean, my thoughts on it would be either do a dedication or an easement. It's an easement for now that would convert to a dedication if he does move forward with it. I guess I don't want to lock out the next subdivision of not having an emergency or having two accesses to a larger subdivision like that.
There are plenty of options for them. I mean, they already have that one house that they have where they have an access
Well,
point
that would be
right there.
access one.
And they have through the school.
No, that's
Well,
not.
you just did that on the Cornerstone development on Loomis Road. They only have one access, and then you have an emergency out through another way. And that was out through another, it's a single lane out. And you just approved that when I was here the last time.
But we would need a secondary access.
So
even if it's
in their case, their whole road coming is public. Their private development will have two private roads going to that one public road with, you could argue, a third emergency to another public road. It's not going through like another private entity. Like the school is all private. None of their roads are public. That is definitely one big difference between this and that scenario.
And we don't know what the school district's ever going to do. They could build a football field, a baseball field, all kinds of stuff back there. And for me to have to give my land to them, I think that's ridiculous. Why should I give my rights to them? And then what you're going to do is improve the value of their land to sell it off and then put something through that we don't even know. I mean, we haven't gotten any input from neighbors or anything like that. It's a pretty quiet street.
which is
I'd like to keep it that way.
Which is why my suggestion would be to do the least evasive way, but still keep the options open for the future. I don't want to lock off. We don't want to lock off that other property.
And last time we met, we didn't take a vote, but it was fairly good consensus that it wouldn't be a requirement. That's why I proceeded this way.
And I think it's clear to the Plan Commission that final decision lies tomorrow night in Common Council's hands. This is immediately on the council agenda, so anything the plan has will be a recommendation provided to the council for their final vote tomorrow. It is an ordinance. The plan commission gives any recommendations, any changes to that. So that's what it is that recommendation, and the council makes that final vote on what they want to see.
So Adam, what are the different options that we would have right now?
There are easement options, but easement and roadway are two very different things. You know, you have an easement, which just means, yeah, there's something provided there, but easement's not usually the best option if there's a chance it could ever become a public road, because those are two very different things. Mr. Weiss would still own the land under an easement, and it would just have some kind of additional overriding right to it, usually not a city public road, though. If it was like emergency access, then yes, you could have something like that potentially. There's the idea of, on the other far end, of doing a dedication, meaning it's land that Mr. Weiss would give up. He doesn't pay taxes on it then, doesn't maintain it then, it becomes city responsibility, even though it may or may not be built. Or the middle option, which this isn't as common, it was more of an older thing, is a road reservation. It's the idea of, hey, we're keeping it reserved and open for a future dedication. Legally, from a surveyor standpoint, it's been explained to me that a reservation and dedication really serve the same purpose. It's just you're not formally enacting it right away. You're saying we're setting it aside for this purpose. I don't know how that works as far as a taxing standpoint. That would be an assessor question, because he's not formally giving it up, but he's saying he knows it's going to be given up. Or you could do something as simple as place a note on lot 3 that maybe says, you know, and I don't know how we would do this. This is kind of a little bit of a gray area, that, you know, some kind of note that no building or development on lot 3 until some kind of access is provided, meaning nothing would have to be done now, but if something ever happens to lot 3, then it forces the topic to resurface again. I mean, that's one option. The only problem would be is if Mr. Weiss were to sell lot 3, not that we are the real estate police, but if he wouldn't disclose that note to somebody, even though it's on the CSM, and if a buyer doesn't do their homework, you could argue there's a little bit of buyer beware there, but those buyer beware issues become issues we have to deal with, which we try to avoid problems like that because we'd rather just be straightforward. But there could be some kind of note like that forces a revisitation of what happens for access if or when lot 3 either gets further divided or if a building permit were ever applied for on it. That's probably the least invasive that causes it to be brought back further down the road when maybe something is known. There's no textbook on exactly how to do this, though, if you aren't going to dedicate it up front.
So where would that road run, on the south lot line?
Well, until we know what's going to happen with lot 3 on Mr. Weiss's perspective, or what's going to happen in the school site. I mean, if you were going to do a dedication, yeah, you just have to pick a location and commit to it, and you'd probably keep it along the southern border, as that's probably the least invasive as far as not chewing the lot more than it needs to. Otherwise, if it were to wait till a future further decision, then let's say, for example, the school were to sell it to a developer, and the developer wants to develop it, and Mr. Weiss can talk to us from him and I a second, say they want to approach him and buy this from him, and if he's a willing seller, obviously they could do something then, well, then they could put that road in a more advantageous spot. But since we don't have a plan, it is, you got to just pick a spot and commit to it if you're going to go that route.
And a question for you, Adam, I'm not sure, if I just subdivide that whole thing into one piece, then this is a moot point?
Any
Is it
split
two
brings
lots?
this question.
Just 2 lots?
Yeah, that doesn't change anything really.
Well, it reverts back to our last conversation where the
Conceptual discussion?
Yeah, the conceptual discussion was where
So
if it was a 2 lot.
I thought it would be 2 lots, and it wasn't until just a couple weeks ago I learned it would have to be 3 lots. And so that was always my idea, is that I would retain all that through there.
Because this conceptual showed one split north to south. Basically, the western 2/3 would be retained by Mr. Weiss, and the eastern portion would be his family member that's purchasing or getting it or buying it. So it wasn't going to be kind of just I don't want to say split on the middle for the exact middle, but it was just a split north and south, a west half and an east half. But when this property, like I said, kind of was just building in this back corner, that forced lot 3 to come to fruition, because you can't have one lot split ownership of 2 other lots. So Mr. Weiss could still own lots 1 and lots 3, but they'd be severed by the owner of lot 2.
If this went back to just a 2 lot, would there be a need for the reservation for the road? I'm just confused as far as where.
Ultimately, you do need a reservation for a possible road or something if you want to look into the future. I mean, you could just say, screw it, keep that land locked how it is.
Mm-hmm.
We try to avoid those things.
Sure.
But you could do that. You could it's a recommendation, so we can recommend whatever we think is best on it. Last discussions that plan was with the two lot split, we were just gonna let them split it and figure out what happens in the future, but is that the best thing to do?
Yeah. Are there any other options other than something on this gentleman's property? As far as having a dual access to that?
I mean, you mean in reference to the school's remaining property?
I mean,
Yeah.
thinking on the fly here would be, you could sell part of that, well, can you sell a parcel and deed restrict it to an emergency exit only?
Yeah, people can deed restrict anything they want, so yeah, it wouldn't be really enforceable by the city per se, but yeah, I mean, a deed restriction, anyone can put a deed restriction on the property for any
So that would
purpose.
take care of the reservation, it would take care of his concern about having main traffic going through there, it would only be used for as an emergency exit
And
for.
if the goal was emergency only, if the goal was saying, hey, we're never thinking about an actual roadway, we're only talking about emergency, I would believe you could just do that via an easement then for that specific purpose, because an easement can be, you can define an easement as micro and minute as you want. So if the question was only emergency, for example, you could say, yeah, you could require an easement, that's the least invasive usually, because Mr. Weiss would still retain ownership. You can make, it doesn't have to be 60 feet like a normal right of way. An easement could be 20 feet or whatever your width of a driveway would be. And you could just make it very clear that the purpose of the easement is only for emergency access to or from future development of the adjacent lot or something. And let's say at some point the school district decides what they want to do next door and says, hey, wait, there's no sense, we're going to put baseball fields or something there. We'll never need emergency access there. At that point, if the city was all in agreement and Mr. Weiss was, the easement can be vacated. It's easy to vacate an easement if you know at some point it's not needed for sure. Much easier to vacate an easement than it is a right of way. So but you'd only want to go that route if you say there's no way we would want a public access, an actual roadway, it would just be like emergency.
Because that seems to be the least invasive. Mr.
I would
Weiss.
say that's the least invasive and still leaves developmental option, or developmental rights to property owner to the east of it. Probably not the ideal thing to do. I mean, ideally you'd want a dedication, but it takes care of the problem, because all subdivisions should have a main entrance and have a secondary access for emergency vehicles.
They can buy any house they want up and down Highview
Well,
and have access to that same parcel of land too. It doesn't have to come through my spot.
But the ordinance talks about people doing it at land splits, not any other time. I mean, like I said, the ordinance is the book we're reading from, and that's what the ordinance talks
I'm kind of
about.
confused because the school district obviously did something to get that one parcel of land on Highview. I think it's tax key 2209987, the house that they put the road in.
yes,
So how did they get access across between the two of
It's just
them?
another lot that they
they
own.
purchased it.
Yeah,
like you're
they
saying.
bought it, but it's
there was a house for sale at the time. They
I
bought
get it, but they have some, so they can just put a road in then, there?
Well, they could apply for, I mean, they have to go through the same process.
Yeah, to make it a public road, they would do a certified survey map to dedicate land for a public road. So similar to what you're doing.
And so they had to do an access easement across that land?
It's their
Because
own
if they
land.
could-
They own the land.
They own the land. They own the whole land, the house,
House and
everything.
everything.
But they're not one parcel at this point in time, they're separate parcels.
Yeah, they're the same land ownership group. I think there actually is an easement, but I don't know if they'd even have to because of the same ownership group.
Yeah,
You only get an easement when you're getting access through someone else's land.
right.
Because wasn't that designed just for overflow, that roadway to Highview?
It was emergency only, and then they did come to the plan commission recently before school started to use it for pickup and drop off because of social distancing during this,
For this-
for this
during
school
COVID
year.
only.
Right.
And there's hundreds of cars that come out of there every day. And my thinking is in the future that if that connects up to a subdivision, this is all coming down through that road eventually. And I don't want it on my land. I don't.
So if we do the easement, that would almost force the district, whoever purchases that land from the district and develops it, to use the Highview property that the school district owns as the main entrance.
And
which-
make that into a full-fledged street.
Make that a full-fledged
Yeah,
street, either, there's enough room there that they could keep the house and sell it off, or they could destroy the house and, adjust the road accordingly. And then the easement on this would be strictly for emergency purposes. If something happened that emergency vehicles had to get into if there was an accident or something on Highview that you needed to reroute in.
But
So the case of it ever being used would be far and few between, and he wouldn't have his daily traffic.
in fairness to the neighbors on Highview, though, if we say, oh, we can reserve this land as an emergency exit, we're literally forcing a street to be put in there.
Well, you're gonna be forcing if that land gets developed, you're gonna be forcing a street in there somewhere, and it goes through, it's gonna have to be rezoned, so it's gonna go through the public hearing process and everything else. Which, it's gotta be rezoned, so nothing's guaranteed. So one way or another, if that property gets developed, a road would have to go in either up there or down here. Or if, under
Right, but
Mr.
if-
Weiss's
but if
proposal,
we
somewhere in
recommend-
between if they buy other houses.
If we recommend an easement, we're taking that secondary approach away. We're forcing that street to be
Correct.
placed up there.
Yeah, you're directing it more so this way, yes.
And if I were a neighbor up there, I wouldn't like that street going.
No one, yeah. This is why it comes to plan commission. We don't make staff approvals on this.
Yeah.
What's your time frame on this? Are you in any rush?
We want to start breaking ground.
Okay.
And I guess the other option is if I went back to just 2 lots, if you would say that I can have that drawn up, and if you would agree with what you agreed with previously in the conceptual, then I would just put it into 2 lots. The only reason I put it in a 3rd lot is because I had to. Because I didn't realize that I can't have cross-access easement across my own lots. But the school district, I guess, can do that because they are mating to each other right there.
The key is your lot number 2 would have no right-of-way frontage. The school has right-of-way frontage on North Cape, so that's the difference. Once again, they have right-of-way frontage, it's just a very big lot. Their main access has right-of-way frontage. Lot 2 would have no right-of-way frontage. In the ordinance says it has to have something for any new split.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I didn't realize that.
I understand.
The break between 1 and 3, I guess, is.
Yeah, if you make 1 and 3 one lot, like it was on the previous one, then that's 2 lot, and then it meets the requirement either way. So I mean, yeah, you don't have to have the strip leading to 2 if 2 and 3 are one lot. I mean, how you guys look at the difference of the access, that's up to the plan commission.
So the school lot does not stretch all the way down to North Cape.
It does. The school's kind of, it has frontage on North Cape, that's its main access, and it's kind of scrunched onto the eastern half or 2/3 of its site. And then the rear or western portion is what's, the unbuilt portion right now that's just farmed, I believe. That's closest to Mr. Weiss's property.
Well, can't that city or that school parcel have Highview access and North Cape access?
It does. It has regular,
I think he's asking for road standards if,
well, it's already installed and it wasn't built that way. And usually you don't want a public road going through a school parking lot, I wouldn't think. I wouldn't think that's would be recommended.
that wouldn't be a,
Now, if let's say the Highview became a full road someday, right? If it went through its right channels, that became a full road, I'm sure that would be severed from the school with a little split off to go to the school. So I'm sure the school could still use that for emergency purposes, but its main purpose then would become this public road for something new.
And you could have emergency exit through the school if necessary.
Yeah, it could.
All right, so just so I understand this. So you could, for that school parcel, have access off a Highview with a relief point through a secondary exit through the school parking lot to North Cape. Or a parallel road to the school parking lot to North Cape. Because I get what
Yeah.
Mr. Weiss is saying. I mean, all you're doing is creating value for the school district and getting nothing out of it.
Right.
Yeah. I
so
understand that.
what he's talking about Here's the school parcel. This is the land that's developable. The Highview property's here. This, if this gets converted into the main road in, that's their primary exit, and then the school district could do an emergency one coming around the building.
Yeah, yeah, you could.
You're a great artist.
Yeah. Put a computer on me and I
Oh, yeah, there you go, there you go.
There's the school.
Yep,
This is North Cape.
okay,
This is the developable land. Mr. Weiss's property's here.
yep,
So this is that parcel off of Highview. That would be their main entrance in, and then their emergency exit would have to come around the building, and it's just an emergency, so
oh,
that would give that subdivision 2 accesses.
okay, okay. Because if that weren't possible, I can't see recommending an easement. I'd say that we have to recommend a dedication.
I don't like making these I guess I want staff just to investigate this till the next meeting, just to verify we can do it this way before we approve this without anything and then find out we're wrong on this.
I agree. I think there's more.
And plus, we
thought that
might
needs to
have
go
the full commission here at that time.
Yep.
So my recommendation would be to defer this till the next meeting.
And I agree. I think it's, there's not enough.
Which would get you what you want if it works. I just want to verify that it's going to work.
Yeah, and that, the next meeting is sooner than normal because this one was later, so it's 3 weeks versus a month.
Right.
I'm willing to work with whatever we have to do.
Okay.
That sounds fair.
Could I get a motion to defer?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of that motion to defer, say aye.
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 Opposed? It's deferred until the next plan commission meeting.
Do you know when that'll be so I can,
It would be December 1st at 6 PM.
my birthday?
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There we
Birthday.
go.
Be a nice birthday present, so thank you.
Yeah.
How good is that?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good day. All right. Miscellaneous business, none. Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned at 6:50 PM. Thank you.
Good deal.